Good morning. We now come to the part of David's adultery with Bathsheba when he tries to cover up what he's done. Um, the, the woman has conceived, and David's first instinct is to cover it up. And the best way to cover it up is to bring her husband home. And then, if her husband is at home, the child could be argued that the child was her husband's and born early. How many times over the years has that happened in people's lives? They've had relationships outside of the relationship that they should be living in, and to cover it up, they try to engineer it. Of course, nowadays we have DNA tests which will prove one way or another. But how many people have got married and then their first child has been born 8 months later or 7.5 months later, and everyone claims it's an early birth. Nowadays, of course, it doesn't matter. People seem to not have any feelings, negative feelings about having children before they even get married. And I think really we've got to a very sad situation when that sort of thing happens. But you remember, it used to be that if you'd slept together before you got married and a child had been conceived, you would get married as soon as possible so that the child would be legitimate. And David sent to his chief soldier, Joab, "Send me Uriah the Hittite." And Uriah comes home. I don't know what I wonder what he thought. What does the king? Why have I been sent home? Have I done something? What's going on? Everyone else is on the battlefield. Is something wrong with Bathsheba, with the household? What is going on? But he comes back, and David uses as a pretext, asking for a report of the battle situation, of the soldiers' situation, and how the war is prospering. And having had that conversation with Uriah, he sends him home to his wife. And Uriah doesn't go home to his wife. The hope is that Uriah will go home to his wife and sleep with her, and then the child could be claimed to be his. But Uriah is too honourable a man to do that. His feeling is, if the rest of the men I fight with can't enjoy a night's pleasure with their wives at home, I won't either. And he stays in the palace at the door with the servants of the king and doesn't go. And they tell him Uriah did not go down to his house. And David says to him, "Why didn't you go down to your house?" And he says, "The ark and Israel and Judah dwell in booths, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are camping in the open fields. Shall I go to my house to eat and to drink, to lie with my wife? As you live and as your soul lives, I will not do this thing." Now here was another moment when David could have thought, what am I doing here in the palace when all my men and my entire army are out on the battlefield, sleeping under the stars, away from home, away from comforts? Here I am in my palace with every comfort around me. I should be with my men. It was another moment when the Lord brought something into David's attention that could have changed his course of action. And I think this is true whenever we find ourselves in a sequence of events that is leading us into sin, or has involved knowingly committing something we shouldn't, doing something we shouldn't have done, whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be a sexual sin, but it could be anything. Our instinct is to cover it up and to justify ourselves and to blame everything else. Our culture blames everything else. Our culture, for rebellion and for drug taking, for drunkenness, for sexual freedom, for hurting other people, for being selfish, for being rude and unkind, being ill-tempered, not studying, not taking advantage of all the good things we have in our life freely for us to enjoy in this country. And you look at places like Afghanistan, you know, the privileges that we have here in this country are enormous. And many of our people feel hard done by, even though they have everything when other countries have nothing. We are so self-centered in lots of ways. And when we behave badly and when we do wrong things, what do we blame? We blame our upbringing, we blame our past, we blame other people who have bullied us, perhaps at school, who have ill-treated us. We blame our parents, we blame our culture, we blame our background, the colour of our skin, all sorts of things. We find it very difficult to actually take on the chin responsibility for things that we have done. And that's things we do simply because of the way we've chosen to live our lives, the way we've chosen to behave. But when we actually deliberately sin like David did, he deliberately sinned with Bathsheba. And here he is now covering it up. And there is this reminder from Uriah that he's not where he should be. Does he not have a conscience? That all his men, all his soldiers, all his colleagues, all the men that he's led over the years and fought with are out on the battlefield, and he is in his palace in comfort. And he doesn't heed that. He doesn't hear it as a criticism. His heart has hardened to it. Something in him had changed, and he was content to be in the palace when his men were fighting in the war. Something had changed in David. I'm going to leave it there. Enough of a thought for today. Be careful. Sin leads us along a road that it's quite hard to get out of. We add lie to lie and conspiring to cover up what we've done. We've all been there. And the fact that David's story is told so graphically for us is a great lesson and a great reminder that however great a follower of God we are, we have to be very careful. David was a wonderful man, and even he was tempted when he wasn't where he should have been. Enough for today. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.